So yesterday, when we left off, we had just talked about the property taxation calendar. That was sort of where we left yesterday. Remember, we're in chapter 3 talking about encumbrances. What did we say an encumbrance was yesterday? What is an encumbrance? Limitation. Some type of limitation. No matter what that limitation is, an encumbrance is just a limitation. Who's limited? Owner of what? Property. Of the property. The owner of the property is limited in some way. And we talked about liens as one of the first examples of an encumbrance. So what did we say a lien was?
Right to foreclose.
Right to foreclose. It's the right to foreclose. It comes from a debt, right? A lot of people start with that definition and say a lien is a debt. Well, a lien is more than a debt, because you can owe people money and they not have a lien against your property or against you personally. A lien is more than that, especially a specific lien, which are the types of liens that we talk about mostly in this class, because specific liens give that creditor the right to do something. That's the right to foreclose, which means they have the right to take property that you own. And the reason they have the right to take it is because the lien attached to the property. Does that make sense? And some of those liens are voluntary. Like, what do we say an example of a voluntary lien would be? When do we voluntarily allow the lien to be attached to the property?
Mortgage.
A mortgage loan is an example of a voluntary lien. And we said some of these things are involuntary liens, like property tax liens or special assessment liens or mechanics liens, which just get attached to the property. And that lien represents the right of that creditor to take the property and do what with it?
Sell it.
Sell it. There's the key to a foreclosure. That's the big disconnect that I think a lot of people, there's no such thing as just taking the property. It's not, the bank doesn't take your house. The bank has it taken and then what? Sold, so that they get the money. They want the proceeds from the sale. Whether they want the property or not is immaterial. They're not allowed to just take the property. There's no such thing. That's called a strict foreclosure, and we don't do that. What they're allowed to do is force the property to be sold out from under you so that they can get the money. Does that make sense for everybody with a foreclosure? Now, one of the biggest, in fact, the biggest lien that we focus on in the class is the most common lien in existence. And why is this the most common lien in existence? Because it's on what?
It's on the property.
On what property?
Our property.
Whose?
The owner.
Yeah, but whose? Why is this the most common? Why is this the biggest one we need to focus on? What properties have property tax liens, folks? Literally, one of them, right? You'll need to turn your brain on a little bit first thing in the morning. I'm not asking complex questions here. And yeah, I have to get on your case a little bit because you sit there and you're why do I make a special focus of property tax liens? Because it impacts every single property. There's no other lien that impacts does everybody have a mortgage?
Yeah.
No. There are people who own their property free and clear who don't have a mortgage. Does everybody have a special assessment? Does everybody have mechanics liens? But does everybody have a property tax lien?
Yes.
You better believe it. And they have it as of what date? January 1 of the current year. So my property taxes on my house in Wake County in Cary have been a lien since January 1 of 2018. They weren't even billed until when? September, until this month. Right? The bill didn't even come out. So they were a lien for a full 8 or 9 months before they even billed me. Before I even know how much I owed them, they were still a lien on my property, which means I owe them even though I don't know how much I owe. You get to do that kind of magic stuff when you're the government. When would they become delinquent?
Following year.
January 6th of the following year. Good. That's the property taxation timetable. Now, we want to talk about the math of calculating a property tax. And it's the first math topic we've come to in the class. I'm sorry if you don't know who this person is. You had a horrible childhood and you missed out. Some might even say, I pity the fool who does not know who this person is. But I want to talk to you about a T-bar, something called a T-bar. It is a math tool that we use extensively in this class. Hopefully you took home last night your formula packet and you started to memorize those formulas. And remember I said just memorize the picture. I don't even care if you know what to do with the picture yet. Just memorize the picture for these first few formulas. Here is the beauty of a T-bar. It is a visual way to set up a formula so that you don't have to do algebra. Now, I know for some of you, asking you to do algebra is the same thing as asking you to launch a rocket into space by 5 o'clock this afternoon. Ain't happening, okay? Even those of you who think you like algebra, I was one of those people, by the way. I hated a T-bar. I thought this is the dumbest third grade mess I've ever seen in my life. Here's what I know from experience. By the time you are finished taking this exam, your brain will be mush. And guess where the math is on the exam? At the end. You won't be able to do algebra to solve a formula by the time you get to the end of this test. In fact, when you go take the exam, they tell you to park with your car aimed towards your house because you won't remember which direction to go in when you walk out of there. It is that much of an ordeal to take this exam. It's like downloading everything that's ever been in your brain in a 4-hour period. So what I'm telling you is you may not think you need them. And some of you may think, okay, I need all the help I can get. Some of you will be sitting there thinking, no, I don't. You know, it was like a conversation I had yesterday with Aaliyah about moving the decimal places. Yeah, that works most of the time when you've got time to stop and think about what you're actually doing. But if you're using percentages, I don't know, conservatively probably 200 times in 4 hours, what's going to be easier? Thinking about moving that decimal every time or just learning how to hit the percent button on the calculator? Learning how to hit the percent button. So these tools, I've developed them for you to use because I've recognized you need something to fall back on. The T-bar is the same way. It's just a visual way to state a formula because it's easier to memorize a picture. Here's the nice thing about the T-bar. They always have 3 things. 2 things on the bottom and 1 thing on top. Everybody with me on that so far? And the 2 things on the bottom are always multiplied by each other. Here's the way a T-bar works. You take whatever's on the bottom, this times this. What do you think it equals? The thing on the top. And no matter what you want to solve for, the T-bar tells you exactly what math to do. Because if you're looking at this on the top divided by something, this is division, by the way, top and bottom. So side by side is multiplication. Top and bottom is what? Division. So when you take the thing on the top and you divide it by this thing on the bottom, what do you think that equals? The other thing on the bottom. When you take the thing on the top and you divide it by this thing on the bottom, it equals the other side of the bottom. So as long as you can memorize the picture, you can always know exactly what the math step is going to be to solve for anything without trying to worry about solving the formula. Does that make sense here? So just as an example, this is a formula that almost everybody is familiar with, a formula for area, right? Length times width. So this is how you would put that into a T-bar. Well, the 2 things that are multiplied, length times width, where do they always go? On the bottom. So these 2 things, length times width equals area. Well, here's the nice thing about that. If I said, okay, well, length times width equals area, but what does width equal? You'd have to sit there and think for a second, wouldn't you? Except with a T-bar, you don't. What does width equal? Area divided by length. What does length equal? Area divided by width. No matter what thing they ask you to solve for, the T-bar instantly tells you what to do with the other 2 things to get there. Is that making sense for everybody? It is just a very quick. So what I would ask that you do in the math is write down the formula as a T-bar every time. When you see this is the kind of math question I'm doing, I want you to write the T-bar down because that way you can circle the thing they're asking you to solve for. Because they really give you way more information than you need in a lot of the math questions. And so sorting through what you need can be tough sometimes, so it's nice to have the formula staring you right in the face. And you can do that. In fact, I've had students that when I hand out the exam, the first thing they do is spend like 5 minutes on their scratch paper writing out all their formulas. They just take they don't even look at the test. They just take the first 5 minutes and write out all their formulas. Because they know that by the time they get to the math, they're probably going to have what? Mush. Forgotten them. So they just take the first 5 minutes and they write out all the formulas because they studied them the night before, it's fresh in their brain, they just kind of dump it right there. And then when they get to the math questions, they got to come back and you got your formula sheet in front of you. Because they won't let you have the formulas on the exam, sorry. As long as you can create them, you can have them, but you can't bring them with you. Okay? So that's what we're going to use most of the time in this class is a T-bar. And this just gives you an idea of what it looks like to plug numbers in there. If we have a width of 100 feet and a length of 150 feet, well 100 times 150 equals 15,000 square feet. Okay? So again, area would equal length or width times length, and length would equal area divided by width. It doesn't matter how you plug it in. And that's the other thing. Some people call it circle math. That's why I've also drawn the circle around a lot of it. The circle indicates that no matter how you plug these numbers in, they're always going to equal each other. So you can check your math too. Well, the nice thing about a T-bar is you can check your math. Well, 100 times 50 equals 15,000, but that also means 15,000 divided by 150 should equal what? 100. 15,000 divided by 100 should equal 150. It's a one big circle, so you can go back and check yourself to make sure your math makes sense. Because quite honestly, one of the big mistakes as well in the math in this class is just keying something wrong. You get in a hurry, especially we deal with a lot of big numbers. We deal with numbers. People aren't accustomed to dealing with hundreds of thousands of things or millions of things, and we do that often in this class. I mean, if you think about purchase prices of properties, quite often it's in millions of dollars, or square footage could easily run into millions of square feet. That's a lot of zeros you got to type in. You could easily leave one off or put it, so it's a good thing to type things twice to make sure that your answer is what you mean it to be. All right, so basic percentages. Now this is not a formula that you need to memorize, but it just gives you the idea of how percentages work. First of all, every T-bar that we deal with, where we deal with a percentage rate, a rate of anything, the rate is always going to be on the bottom right-hand corner down here. Your rate, and the reason, it really doesn't matter whether you put things on the left or the right on the bottom. Here's why I put it on the right. Because if you're using the percent button on the calculator, like we said yesterday, you always have to type the percentage in a second, right? Remember, you couldn't type in 15% times 150,000. You have to type it in 150,000 times 15%. So if I put the rate on the right-hand side over here, it's just a reminder of the order I need to type it into the calculator. That's the other thing. Don't try to outsmart the T-bar. I have plenty of students who will sit here and they will diligently write out the T-bar. And they'll be like, okay, I got to know this, and I know this. This one's on the top, and this one's on the bottom. And I'm going to multiply them. No! What was the whole point of writing out the T-bar? The T-bar tells you what the math, if you're on the top and the bottom, what's your math step going to be? It's going to be division. So don't outsmart it and write it. Don't write it down because I say write it down. Embrace it as a tool that's going to help you get through the math in the class. But with basic percentages, we're always going to have the right on the bottom right, the rate on the bottom right. Percentages are always about counting something. So one of the things that I make you do throughout the class is grade your own tests. Because, and I love teachers. I am the biggest proponent of teachers in the world, especially public school teachers. But God help them, they all teach you the most horrendous way to grade your work. When you, how many of you grade your own papers in elementary school sometimes? Or check, they pass them out and you pass these. And what's the question everybody asks? How much is each one worth? This is a stupid way to grade a test. Because it doesn't teach you percentages. Your grade is really your percent you got correct. Would you agree with that? Your grade, if you got an 85 on the test, what that really means is you got 85% of the questions correct. Does that make sense for everybody? So what that means is out of the total number of questions, you got 85% of those right. That is your rate. That's your percentage rate on the test. Well, think of just scoring an exam. If you got 60 out of 75 questions right, look at this formula. What are you trying to count? How many questions you got what?
Correct.
Right. So what will go on the top? The 60 that you got correct. And what will go on the bottom? The 75 total questions on the exam. Every rate works the same way. The thing you're trying to count goes on the top. The total that's possible goes on the bottom. What's the total that's possible? You couldn't have got more than how many right? 75, because there's only 75. That's the number that goes on the bottom. And how many you actually got right goes on the top. And that would give you your grade or your rate on the exam. So I make you grade your own quizzes. Don't ask me how many points something is worth. Do that. grade it yourself. Learn how to embrace a percentage, because everything we do is based on percentages in the class. So, for example, this is the first formula that we deal with. The first big formula in the class is the property tax math formula. And on the top of the property tax math formula is the tax bill itself. How much you owe in annual property taxes. And you might want to write annual property tax bill. I should probably change the slide to say annual property tax bill, because later on in the class we're going to sometimes be asked to break that thing down into monthly or daily. If you had the annual property tax bill and you were asked for the monthly tax bill, what would you do with it?
Divide that by 12.
Divide it by what? By 12, because there are 12 months in the year, right? But this is the annual property tax bill that we're calculating. Now, what do we say about property taxes in North Carolina? They're calculated based on what?
Assessed value.
The assessed value of the property. And that comes from, what's the process that happens every 8 years called? The octennial reappraisal. So that assessed value is going to be locked in for that 8-year time period. The assessed value goes down here on the bottom left. And then over here on the bottom right is the North Carolina tax rate. Here's the great thing for you guys. North Carolina uses a percentage-based tax rate, and you already have a percent button on your calculator. Not every state does use a percentage-based tax rate, but we do. Now, we don't say it as a percent. We don't say the property taxes are 1.5%. We say them the old-fashioned way, which is they're $1.50 per 100. How many cents are on a dollar, folks? 100. So per 100 is just another way of saying per what?
Per dollar?
Per cent. They're exactly the same thing. So a property tax rate of $1.50 per 100 is the exact same thing as 1.50 what? Percent. You don't need to make any conversions. You don't need to change anything. You just take that North Carolina tax rate and you use the percent button on your calculator. So, for example, if I tell you that the North Carolina tax rate is $1.12 per 100, how are you going to type that into your calculator?
1.12%.
1.12 what? Percent. You don't need to change a thing except put the percent button behind it. Does that make sense to everybody? If the North Carolina tax rate is 78 cents per 100, how are you going to type that into your calculator? 0.78 what? Percent. Don't change anything. Just type it in exactly as you see it, except use the percent button. Is everybody with me so far on that? Okay? If you do that, I promise the math will be a lot easier for you. So here's an example. What's the yearly tax bill for a property with an assessed value of $220,000 in Chapel Hill, where the tax rate is $1.76 per 100? And just for the record, I do try to give you all throughout the class pretty accurate local tax rates so that I don't just kind of make up tax rate numbers. I try to give you pretty accurate local tax rate numbers. Not that you need to know them, but at some point, are you going to actually be out there in the business and need to have an idea of how much property taxes are in one community versus another? And what you'll come to learn is that number right there is astronomically high for the state of North Carolina. To give you a point of comparison, in Cary, it's $1.01 per 100. Is there a big difference between $1.76 and $1.01? Yes, absolutely. Huge difference. It's almost double, right? It's about 70% higher tax rate. I'm not knocking Chapel Hill. I love Chapel Hill, but you ought to understand there's a big difference between somebody shopping in Chapel Hill and somebody shopping in Wake County just on the amount of property taxes they're going to pay. Okay? So, what is the yearly tax bill for a property with an assessed value of $220,000 in Chapel Hill, where the tax rate is $1.76 per 100? So this would be where you would write the formula down. Now, you don't have to do that here because obviously it's done for you on the slide, but on a test, you would be writing down this formula, first thing. And then the next step is to circle what you want. What are they asking me for? They want to know the what? They want to know the tax bill. What is the yearly tax bill? And this is where you have to discipline yourself to actually read. I can't help you with the reading part. You have to discipline yourself. When I ask you what do they want to know, you have got to focus in, laser-like, and zone in on and find the question. The question is not this 3-paragraph long thing. How long is the question going to be? Like 3 words, 5 words. There it is right there. What is the tax bill? There's the question. A good hint, look for the question mark. Now there won't always be one, but very often where you'll find the question. The rest of it is information you might need to solve the question. Find that first. They want to know the tax bill. So we're going to write the formula. We're going to circle tax bill. So what does the T-bar say we're going to be doing? To get the tax bill, what 2 things do we need to know? We need to know the assessed value and the what? And the rate. And what's our math step going to be with those 2 numbers? We are going to multiply those 2 numbers because they are side by side. You see how that just quickly that T-bar helps you solve that? Do you have a question, Freddie? No. Oh, okay. So, $220,000 assessed value, right here, times 1.76, and it's $1.76 per 100. I'm just going to type that as 1.76% in my calculator, equals an annual tax bill of $3,872. Everybody okay with that number? And where that number comes from? Okay? 220. You ought to check that in your calculator. Make sure that's it. When we go through these examples, don't take my word for it. That's the other thing. When we start going through math examples, I make mistakes too. I miss key stuff too. Don't let me say a wrong number and y'all just sit there and be quiet. Correct me. Because you should be following along and trying it in your calculator and making sure you're coming up with that answer. So much of this is muscle memory, getting used to doing the same thing over and over and over. Is everybody good on $3,872 here as an annual tax bill? Okay, good. Well, look at this one. It says, what's the total assessed value of a property located in Raleigh where the Wake County tax rate is 75 cents per 100 and the City of Raleigh rate is 28 cents per 100 if the total tax bill is $31.80? What's the question? What do they want to know? What is the assessed value? The question is, what is the assessed value? You can't ever answer the question unless you find the question first. So the first most challenging thing is, what is the assessed value? So what are we going to do first?
Circle.
Circle it. We're going to circle that. We're going to write the formula down, and we're going to circle the thing that we're solving for. Because that tells me I need to deal with the other 2 things. Is everybody following me on that? So what are the other 2 things that I need to know? I need to know the annual what?
Tax bill.
Tax bill and rate. I need to know the tax bill. Do I know the tax bill?
Yes.
Yes. How much is it? $3,180. So I just bring that down to here. Do I know the rate?
Yes.
Sort of. Because they gave it to me in how many pieces? 2. But it says the property is located in Raleigh, where the Wake County tax rate is this, and the City of Raleigh tax rate is that. What did I say yesterday we would do in the case of a property located in the city where there's 2 tax rates? What are they going to pay? They're going to add them together because they pay both of them, right? So their total tax rate is actually going to be, and people sometimes are like, well, how do I add those 2 percentages together? Folks, they're just pennies, right? It's 75 cents plus what? 28 cents, which is $1 and what? $3.03, which is the same thing as 1.03%. So now we know the rate. We know the tax bill. Do we have everything we need to know in order to calculate the assessed value of that property? Yep. And here's the other thing. Top and bottom, we know the math is going to be what? Division. Don't be stubborn. The thing on top goes in the calculator first. I don't care that it's sometimes a smaller number. You're not in 2nd grade. You don't always divide a small number into a big number. Sometimes, guess what? We're real mean. We divide big numbers into small numbers. You can do that. Put the thing that's on top in the calculator first. So what are you going to type in the calculator exactly? 3180 what? Divided by 1.03%. And that'll give you an assessed value on that property of $308,000 and some change. Everybody see where that number comes from? Okay? That's the assessed value of that property. So let's do this then. Take out the worksheet that I passed out for property taxation and acreage math. And let's practice. Some of these you're going to take them as homework, but I want to do a little bit of practice before you do. All right? I want you guys to go ahead and do number 1 and 2. And as you do, I will take a walk around and see how you're doing. Huh?
I already did.
You already done it? Well, aren't you super stuck now?
If you can check it.
I will. Let me do it myself. Okay.
Okay, so all you need to do is use that.
5%.
Okay. Well, do they give you this number? Because I think I was looking back in the card, and I think they do that. Or maybe I'm wrong. So then would you divide that?
That's how they do it, but if you keep it says expressed as a dollar per 167. They tell you to make a decimal. People who wrote this book, idiots.
Okay, but we don't need to ever do this.
No, that's why you got a percent button to calculate it.
Okay. Okay, that kind of.
I shouldn't say they're idiots, but they just don't.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Round, no matter how tough it
Just one and two. Okay, so everybody feel pretty comfortable at least with those two, right? And I know some of you, many of you have worked ahead, which is great. And don't worry if you're frustrated with something that's more advanced. We haven't gotten there yet. You know, that's the next sort of horizon. And it's great to work ahead and see if you do. We got to make sure in building block stages we're good here. And you really should try at least. And I know you feel like some of you don't need it. But there are a lot of you out there who aren't writing down the formula. Folks, I'm telling you, look at that math packet. There's something like 30 different formulas in there. You're really going to be capable of, by the end of this class, just whirring through all those mentally without being able to write them down. I don't think you are. I've been teaching this a long time. It's easy to do right now when you only got one formula to work with. But in another couple of weeks, it's going to all of a sudden be 5, and then it's going to be 10, and then it's going to be 20, and then it's just going to be like, holy crap, I never learned how to use a T-bar, and it's too late. So it really is a tool that helps to embrace it early on, because writing the formula down helps give you a roadmap of where you need to go. So on the first one, again, I find a question first. What's the question? They asking me what? What is the tax due or tax bill? So there's my formula. I wrote it down: tax bill over assessed value times rate. I circled what they were asking me for. So what are the other two things? Are they side by side or are they top and bottom? Side by side. So what am I doing with them? I'm multiplying them. I'm multiplying that assessed value of 282,500 times the rate of 0.98%. and that gives me an annual tax bill of $2,768.50. And then on number 2, I forgot to circle on number 2. On number 2, they wanted to know what the assessed value was of the property. And for assessed value, the formula tells me that I need to know the tax bill and the what? The rate. In order to calculate the assessed value, I need to know the tax bill and I need to know the rate. Those are the other 2 things. And they gave me the tax bill of $38.50, so I just filled that in on top. And they also gave me the rate of $1.15, which is the same as 1.15 what? Percent. And since it's top and bottom, what is my math going to be? Division. So the number on top divided by the number on the bottom. Everybody all right with that?
For the first one, I didn't get.
You didn't get 0.50. I'm sorry? Are you using the percent button?
Oh, I just do mine.
You moving decimals.
Well, do like 98.
You realize 0.98 is 98%, right?
What is it?
Point 98. So you just multiply it times 0.98?
Well, I'll do 98 divided by 100.
Not 98 divided by 100. 0.98 divided by 100. That's why I don't like moving decimals.
Well, I'm getting like the.
Yeah. So I'm looking to see if it even has
It does, but I don't know how to get it like
a percent button on it. Oh yeah, it's got like it's like an alternative button. Hold on, let me see real quick. I think I figured it out. 38.50 divided by 0.9. 282,500. Gosh, this thing is finicky. Times 0.98 inverse percent. Yeah, no, it does not work on this calculator. So we're going to get you a new calculator. You're going to get you a new calculator. I'm not going shopping with you, but you're going to get you a new calculator. I'd offered you that one, but it died last week. This thing is like 100 years old, and it finally kicked the bucket. It's a TI's 01, I think. Oh, there you go. See, one of your classmates has graciously provided you with a new calculator. It only has 8 digits, but that's all right. That'll be okay for right now. All right. Everybody good on these first 2? Not if you use the percent button. 0.98%. Not 98%. 0.98. Don't do any conversion. Don't do any moving around. Don't do anything fancy. 0.98%. There we go.
Sorry.
No problem. That's why we do it. That's why we do it. I mean, the whole point is to go through and make sure you get comfortable with it. All right, now, I'm going to switch back over to the slides for a second. The T-bar continues to work just fine no matter what we want to calculate. However, I do need to point out something special about this kind of a question. In this question, what are they asking me for? Take a second and find the question. What is the tax rate? Okay? So here's your first lesson about percentages dealing with a T-bar. Anytime they're asking you for the rate, the number that comes out of the T-bar is the rate in decimal format. You got to convert it back to a percentage, because on the test, the answers are all going to be in percentage format. Is everybody with me on that? So here's the rule. It's just one simple rule. Whenever they're asking you for a rate, you're going to multiply your final answer by 100. Only when it's asking you for the rate. Only when it's asking you for the rate are you going to do that. But whenever it's asking you for a rate, you're going to multiply your final answer by 100. So a question like this one, for example. What is the total tax rate for a property with an assessed value of $275,000 and a yearly tax bill of $23.50? Well, they want to know the rate. And whenever they're asking for the rate, what are we going to do with our final answer? Multiply it times 100. So we're going to bring that assessed value of $275 down here to the bottom. We're going to put that tax bill of $23.50. Because if you type that into your calculator, if you type in $23.50, remember the thing on top goes in what? First. So if you type $2,350 divided by an assessed value of $275,000 and you just hit equals, I come up with 0.008545. Does everybody see that number? That number look familiar? 0.008545. But what are we going to do with that number?
Times it by 100.
Multiply it times 100. So the total tax rate is not 0.0085, it is 0.85.
Quick question on that, when we do convert it, I guess it's gonna be a multiple choice. So they're either gonna have it as percentage or more than likely to be.
Dollars per 100.
Per 100.
As long as you're looking for 0.85, that's not going to matter, because they're not going to have one choice that says 0.85% and one that says $0.85 per 100 and expect you to choose between them.
Okay.
Here's what the answer choices are going to be: 0.85, 0.085, 0.0085, 8.5.
Gotcha, okay,
Because they're counting on the fact that you can't move decimals around.
right.
That's what they're banking on. And that's why I tell you don't move them, because that's the most common mistake with percentages, is moving the wrong number of decimal places. So your rule of thumb is going to be, and you only have to do it whenever you're being asked to calculate a rate. Whatever rate you're asked for, whether it's rate of profit later in the class, what's his rate of profit? Or if you want to know what's his capitalization rate. Anytime you insert the word rate in there, and they're asking you for a rate, what are you going to do with your final answer? Multiply it by 100. And you only do that when they're asking for the rate. You don't do that if they're asking for the tax bill. You don't do that if they're asking for the assessed value. You just use whatever percentage they give you and use the percent button on your calculator. Because here's the truth, when you use the percent budget, it's dividing by 100. And so what you're doing is kind of unfixing that on your calculator. But whenever they ask you for a rate, just multiply the final answer times 100. And you'll be good every single time. So, all right, let's go back over to the worksheet then and look at number 3. Because that's what number 3 asks you to do. Go ahead and do number 3 if you haven't already. Take just a minute to do number 3.
Is it important to go 3 decimals
I usually
over?
actually go 4
Okay,
and just try not to round.
okay.
So if I went 4, it would be a 3 there. Don't worry about rounding. I know it's going to be tough for some people. Here's the other thing. You can't be a perfectionist with the math in this class, because some of you are going to round, some of you are not going to round. You're going to end up with different answers. From a test taking standpoint, they're not different answers, because almost every question on the test is going to ask you to round to like the nearest $100 or the nearest. So the answer choice on the test is going to be 1.1%. No matter what you round to, you're all going to come up with 1.1. Does that make sense for everybody? So don't freak out about rounding.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask you. Is it gonna be like?
There will never
because I just
be
put,
a
like,
test
1.7.
answer choice where rounding will make a difference.
Okay.
Rounding will make a difference to you because you want to see exactly the number you've got. You got to get over it. I don't know what other way to tell you. I know it's hard for some of you to let go, but you got to let go. Especially when we get to things like property tax prorations. Your answer might be $5 off from somebody else's answer and you're both exactly right. Because you're prorating something over the course of 300 days. Folks, if their daily rate is 2 cents off from yours, 2 cents doesn't sound like much. If you multiply it times 300 days, how much is it going to throw you off? $6, right? 2 cents times 300 days is $6. You're still both going to be right because the final answer is going to be rounded to such a big degree, it's not going to matter. So don't, what I usually tell people is just go 4 past the decimal, don't worry about the rounding. Just go 4 past the decimal, write down exactly what's on the calculator, 4 past the decimal. And you don't have to worry about rounding. But did everybody come up with some variation of 1.1, 1.11, 1.115, however far you went out percent?
How many decimals to the right do you want us to use? 4. 4, okay.
4. Everybody okay with that? Feel pretty good about it? All right? Again, it's a matter about getting discipline, setting up the T-bar, and doing exactly what it says. So, look at number 4. Number 4 adds in a little bit of a wrinkle here. Number 4 is also much more like a test question you could expect to see. What do you notice instantly about number 4? Forget the math part of it. Just look at the number of words there. What do you notice? A lot more words. This is what you can expect to see. So the first thing you've got to realize is no human is capable of reading that whole thing for detail and remembering everything. You can't do it. When you come to a question like this, the first thing you're going to do is scan through the question, and what you're looking for is the question itself. You just need to find that short 3-word, what is this? What do they want to know? Because that's going to allow you to write the formula down, and now you can go back and pick and choose things that you need out of the text. Is everybody following me on that? So when you look at this question, I'm not reading for detail. Andrew's in the market to purchase a new home in Wake Forest. Okay, there's no question there, so I'm going on. He finds that ad valorem tax rates for property in Wake Forest include I don't care, I don't care, I don't care, because there's no question there. He also notes that new construction properties receive an initial assessed value of I don't give a shit, because there's no question there. If he purchases the home for $390,000, what can he expect to pay annually for his property taxes? Boom. Question. What do they want to know? They want to know how much he's going to pay in property taxes. What is his property tax bill? Does that make sense for everybody? And so the first thing I'm going to do is write down the formula that's going to get me to a tax bill. And I know that has tax bill on the top with assessed value and rate on the bottom. And circle the thing I'm looking for, which is the tax bill. So now, before I go back and start looking into all those words, what 2 things am I on the hunt for here? What do I need to know in order to answer this question? I need to know the rate, and I need to know the assessed value. Is everybody good on that? You see how we just took a whole big long paragraph and we just distilled it down to boom. We need these 2 things. Give me this, and shut up about the rest. Okay? And that's the way you have to attack these questions, because they give you so much stuff. And some of it you need and some of it you don't. Okay? So Andrew's in the market to purchase a new home in Wake Forest. There's nothing I can use there. He finds that the ad valorem tax rate for properties in Wake Forest includes 66 cents per hundred. So here's where I'm going to just start making notes for myself. Where am I going to put that 66 cents? In the rate down here. It includes 66 cents per 100 of value in Wake County taxes and 35 cents per 100 in Wake Forest taxes. Where am I going to put the 35 cents? In the rate as well. So I'm just making notes for myself. He also notes that new construction properties receive an initial assessed tax value of 95% of their sales price. So the assessed value is going to be 95% of what it sells for. Does that make sense for everybody? Because he didn't tell us the assessed value. He purchased the home for $390,000. That's not the assessed value, is it? That's his purchase price. What did they tell us the assessed value was going to be? 95% of that number. So to get to the assessed value, we're going to have to take that $390,000 purchase price and do what with it? multiply by
95.
95%. And that equals an assessed value of $370,500, which now we can bring over here to our formula. Now do we have everything we need in order to answer what our tax bill is going to be here? We know the assessed value of the property, and we know the tax rate because we can simply do what with those two numbers? Add them together. So here's what my math step is going to look like on this question. It's going to be $370,500 times, what's my total tax rate? 1.01? 1.01%. And, oops, 370,500 times 1.01%. $3,742.05. Sound about right?
Yes, sir.
How do we feel about that question? Because that is very indicative of a property tax test question, right there. That's about the level of detail that you would be expected to go to on an average difficulty property tax math question on the test. And the only thing that made it a little bit harder, well, the two things that made it a little bit harder. Number one, the overabundance of words, right? Because they gave us a lot of stuff we just, I mean, like the whole first statement. Andrew's in the market to purchase a new home in Wake Forest. Who cares? That has nothing to, but they're going to give you that. And so it's about sorting through what you need. But the way you sort through what you need is writing the formula down. You notice how that helped? When we wrote the formula down first, we knew what things to go back and look for, what things to hunt for. And it's almost like they're highlighted at that point, right? When you know, okay, I need the assessed value and I need the rate, those words kind of jump out at you as you're reading through. That's the whole point of writing a formula down in the first place. It becomes like your little roadmap. So look at number 5. Number 5, we talked about yesterday. We didn't do it in the sense of an assessed value, but yesterday we talked about the idea of making percentage adjustments in numbers. You remember that discussion we had yesterday? We said that every number before we start adjusting it starts at what percentage? 100%. And then we can either adjust up or down from that 100%. Everybody with me on that? Okay? I don't think I dreamed it. I think we talked about that yesterday, right? So, in this case, it says calculate the assessed value of a home which was previously valued at $276,500, but saw its assessed value go which direction? Up, rise, at the last octennial reappraisal by 12%. So here's the thing. We started at 100%. Oops. We started at 100%. We went which way? Up by 12. So what do we end up with? 112% of, and what number did we start with? 276,500. So how do I type that in the calculator? 276,500 times 112%. Does that make sense for everybody? 276,500 times 112%, and the new assessed value of that property is $309,680. Everybody okay with that? Now, is there a little bit more sort of old-fashioned, longer way we could go about that if you wanted to?
Sure.
What's the long way we could go about that? We could calculate just the 12% of 276.5 and then do what with it? Add it back to the 276.5. You can do that as well. Doing it by 112% just makes it all in one short, sweet little step. Okay? Anybody need help with that? Or are we good so far now? I want to make sure you're good on the percentage adjustments as well. So look at number 6 then. What is the new tax rate in Wake County if the County Board of Commissioners voted to lower the tax rate by 7% from its previous level of $1.15. So, it started at what percentage? 100%, right? And which way did it go? Down by how much? 7. So what percentage are we left with? 93% of $1.15. Does that make sense? So you're typing your calculator what? $1.15 times what? 93%. 1.15 times 93%. That new tax rate is 1.0695. Okay? 1.0695. All right, I want you guys to work on number 7 then. 7 is a complex question because it requires you to do a lot of raising and lowering and adjusting. Don't forget your process though. Find the questions. Don't try to read for all that detail. Find the question and work your way backwards. Write down a formula.
does. It does, absolutely. Well, I said we would do it this week. Well, that's $1.15 per 100, so it's 1.15%.
Okay. Okay, it did happen, because I knew to do this,
For the SS value. And then you
but I
did,
wasn't sure.
but you weren't sure what to
if
do.
I was subtracting. I wasn't sure once I got that decrease, I knew I had a decrease.
Mhm.
So, use it.
Just like you did over here. Just like you took the old SS value and multiplied times 115% right here. You take the old rate and multiply times 90% to get the new rate. So basically what you have to get is the new assessed value and the new tax rate so that you can get the new tax bill.
Okay. Okay.
Okay? You okay?
Hey, good, I think I glanced at pretty much everybody's. This one is this is a tough question, okay? Now, this is not meant for you to beat yourself up over. This is just to show you how much information could potentially be packed into a question. The thing you had to do here is make two different adjustments, right? Basically, they're saying, all right, what is somebody's new, this is a real world kind of question, by the way. Remember yesterday when I said that just because your assessed value goes up doesn't necessarily mean your tax bill will go up, because what could they do at the same time? They could raise your value but lower your what? Your tax rate. And that's exactly what's happening here. By raising the value and lowering the rate, you got a whole new formula for your tax bill. And in order to calculate, you can't use the new assessed value with the old tax rate, and you can't use the old assessed value with the new tax rate. You need new tax rate and new assessed value. Does that make sense for everybody? And basically what they did was gave you the old ones and said, well, this one went up and this one went down. And that's what I tried to show you here. So for the assessed value piece, the old assessed value was $315,650. And that went up by 15%, so I multiplied it times 115%. That gave us a new assessed value on the property, because the assessed value went up by 15%, of $362,997.50. And then on the rate side, they said that the old rate of $1.15 is no longer the rate. The new rate did what? Decreased. It went down, decreased by 10%. So that's why I took the old rate and multiplied it by 90%. Because if you decrease by 10, you're multiplying by what's left, which is 90%. And that gives us a new tax rate of $1.03, 3.5 cents, $1.03.5 cents basically, 1.035%. And so now I just go back to my normal formula, which is assessed value times rate, because I have the new assessed value of $362,997, and I have the new rate of 1.035%. And when you multiply those two, you get a new tax bill of $3,757.02. Another thing I'll tell you about doing the math in this class, one thing you may want to get in the habit of doing, bring yourself plenty of scratch paper and do these on scratch paper, because I don't always give you enough room on the paper to really work it out so that you can do it sort of in a linear format and make sense of it yourself. What you don't want to do is just have numbers written down all over the page. Because we're not doing this exercise to see if you can get it right now. We're doing this exercise so that you can get it right 8 weeks from now. You're going to need to look back at this at some point. If you just got random numbers written down on the page, you're not going to know what those mean. You can't follow your own notes. If you can't follow your own notes, it's not going to be helpful for you. So you really do need to get a habit of like showing all your work and putting it line by line and putting it in a linear format so that you can see what's going on, so that you know where all those numbers came from. So when you look back at this 3 weeks from now, it's not completely Greek to you. Yes, sir, Fred?
So a quick question, and breaking that question down, would you say that, you mentioned that they'll give you a lot of information that's really not valuable, you have to sort through. When it comes to numbers, percentages that they're putting in those questions, is it safe to say that we're going to be using those to calculate? Okay.
They will give you numbers you don't need either.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially when we get into financing and stuff like that later in the class. They'll tell you, oh, it's a 30-year fixed rate, fully amortized loan, at 7.25% interest, and you don't even need that interest rate. You can figure out whatever they're asking you in the question. And so they throw it in there to see if you know that you don't need it.
Yeah. You have to. I guess I did. I had to assume that. I did assume that the 315,650 was really the new assessed increase. Because it doesn't really tell you, right?
Well, it said the old assessed value. The first thing it tells you is that the increase in assessed value of 15%, and then it said the old assessed value. So those two things.
It said she saw it, but we don't know when she saw it.
Well, I'm telling you that's about as explicit as they can possibly be on something like that.
That's where I made my mistake.
Yeah, by saying here's how much it increased and here's the old number, they want you to increase it.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So when we're doing with rates, we always refer to percentages. Always.
Yes. Yes. Almost everything will be stated as a percentage. Because even the tax rate, even though it'll say dollars per 100, is the same thing as a percentage.
Like on this one, whenever I was doing 90% of $1.15, kind of got my numbers mixed up because I don't forget stuff. Or whenever I convert it to a percentage, I always want to put the zeros there, like moving a decimal.
Yeah, right.
Not.
Right. No, I get it. Yep, I used to be the same way. You'll get in the habit of just using the percent button and it'll become second nature to you, pretty quickly too. Okay? Number 8, I want you guys to do for homework. Number 9, I'm going to go back over to the slides for a second so we can talk about number 9. Unfortunately, and I really dislike this about this class, we have to teach you some things that quite honestly don't matter in your life. Because when you take the license exam, there's a national section and a state section. So somewhere in Michigan today, there's somebody sitting in a real estate class going, why in the hell do we have to learn how to calculate property taxes using a percentage? And the instructor's saying because there are jerks in North Carolina that use percentages. Well, we're here saying the opposite. Why in the hell do you have to learn how to use a mill rate? Well, because that's what they use in Michigan and Ohio and some of those Midwestern Rust Belt states. It's just a different way of dealing with a property tax rate. And because you're taking a national licensing exam, you have to know how to deal with both of them. So we do not use mill rates in North Carolina. They are used in other states, not very many other states. Most states use the same thing we do, which is just a percent valuation or a percent number for taxes. Mill rates, mill is actually metric for million, which doesn't mean a million, it means 1,000. It's 1/1,000. So the key number for mill rate is always 1,000, because the way you deal with a mill rate is to divide it by 1,000. Whatever they give you as the mill rate, look at the formula. Mill rate divided by 1,000, that's going to give you the tax rate that you're going to use in the question. Does that make sense for everybody? So the mill rate, and realistically, the only thing you're ever going to have to do is just convert that to that mill rate by dividing it by 1,000. That's all you're going to have to do. If you can do that, you've done your job. So as an example here, it says, what is a mill rate of 17 if you express it as a decimal tax rate? Well, the mill rate is 17. What are we going to do with it? Divide it by 1,000. So its decimal rate is 0.017. That's all you have to know. If you can do that, you can answer a national section question about mill rates. All you have to know is be able to divide them by 1,000. So here's an example. It says, what's the tax bill for a property with an assessed value of $165,000 and a mill rate of 9 mills per dollar? Well, we want to know the tax rate, or tax bill, sorry. We want to know the tax bill. And what two things does the T-bar tell us we need to multiply in order to get the tax bill? Assessed value and rate. They didn't give us our good old North Carolina percentage rate, though. What did they give us?
mill rate.
And mill rate. So what's the first thing we're going to do with that mill rate? Divide it by, convert it. So divide it by what?
1,000.
Divide it by 1,000. So that mill rate of 9 becomes 0.009. And that's what you're going to plug in for your rate when you're doing the math, 0.009. So now it's just a tax rate of $165,000 times 0.009. Because you're not using a percentage rate this time, you're just using the mill rate number.
So quick question. On this slide, it has mill rate, and then the T-bar on the right is 10.
That's if you want to convert it to a North Carolina tax rate. But they don't ask you to do that anymore. They used to ask you to do that.
This is the one.
Now they ask you simply to convert it to a decimal. They want you to go straight to a decimal rate. Exactly. So divide it by 1,000. If you divide it by 10, what you've done is convert it to a North Carolina tax rate. But they want you to go straight to a decimal tax rate. So divide by
So then you
1,000.
would take the 09 and divide it by 10?
You would.
Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry. What now?
So go back to that example right there. No, the mill rate example.
It's the same question.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
The tax rate, 0.009. So are you saying that that's what you do to convert it to North Carolina?
No, I'm saying you would take 9 and divide it by 10 to convert it to a North Carolina tax rate.
Okay.
So it would be 0.9%. But they don't want you to do that on the test. They want you to go straight to the decimal rate.
Okay.
So that is 0.009. Just divide it by 1,000 and take it straight to the decimal rate. So in this question, our assessed value is 165 and our rate is 0.009. Multiply those two together and you get a tax bill of $1,485. So go back and look over on that worksheet that we were just on and look at question number 9. You should be able to really quickly answer question number 9. So go ahead and do that. What's the equivalent rate for a property that has a mill rate of 11.8? That look right? 0.0118 divided by 1,000. It's as simple as that to convert it. That's all you need to know to do. Now, number 10, I want you to go ahead and do number 10. I was going to give it to you as homework, but I think we can go ahead and finish that one up. Sort of the last little thing right here. Number 10 wants you to use a mill rate in order to calculate a tax bill. So first thing is always, of course, to write down the formula and then circle what they're looking for. Tax bill over assessed value times rate, and they're looking for the bill. Look over there and check your number when you're done and see what it looks like. $3,646, $3,646 and some change. The big key there was just to take that mill rate first and do what with it?
Convert it.
Convert it. Divide it by 1,000. Once you do that, yep.
I kind of hesitated because I was thinking about the fact if I had to multiply it by 100. But
They're not asking you for the rate. That's only when they're asking you for the rate.
And I was like, yeah, well, I kind of hesitated there. And I was like, oh no.
Nope.
Yeah.
No.
And I got it right again.
Good. Good. So all you got to do, just so when you think of a mill rate, the first thing to think of is get rid of it. All right? Just get rid of it. And the way to get rid of it is divide by 1,000. And that'll get you to something you can work with.
You're not turning that into a percent because it's a mill rate.
I'm sorry?
And it's not a percent.
It's not a percent. That's the thing. It's not a percent. It's a mill rate in and of itself. You don't need to do anything further. You don't need to use the percent button. You just need to use that number. And that's the key thing about a mill rate. It's not a percentage. Don't ask me why they do it that way. They're from Michigan. What do you know?
That would be the trip up on that. Just understanding the mill rate versus
Is not a percentage rate. Yep. Yep. They call them. They actually, the mill rate is short for millage rate. I don't know what millage means, but they're actually called millage rates. Of course, they're odd too. They pay taxes twice a year. They have a winter property tax bill and a summer property tax bill, and they're not equal amounts either. That's what's crazy about it. They have two tax bills. They're spread out equally as far as like they come 6 months apart, but one is like 3 times the size of the other one. It's the I don't know how.
Sounds like they have liens year round.
I'm sorry?
Sounds like they have liens year round.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they do. I don't know how they come up with their taxation system. Well, that can be said too. All right. Feel okay with that? That kind of concludes the first math section of the class. Doesn't conclude math for today. We still got to do a lot of chapter 4 acreage math. But that's the first introduction to the way the math is going to work in the class. And largely, it's not going to change. We're just going to keep using T-bars, except we use different ones over and over and over. Okay? So let's do this. Let's take a break. Come back at 11 o'clock. It's about 15 minutes. And then we will move into chapter 4. On 6.
Oh, okay.
your process is right, so you should be right after that.
That's why I'm nervous, if I learn it wrong, but I'll do it that way.